Me, Sherry, and we are here for week 2 of Unzipped with Sherry. Hope you guys all had an amazing week this past week. I am like a hot mess because I'm just so excited today. If you guys watched our show last week, we had an amazing conversation with Chelsea, who was wonderful. And this week we have another special guest, Ken Cadieux. You might know him on Instagram as Keto Ken. You might know him on TikTok as the Bariatric Chef, but I've had the privilege of just knowing him as Ken. So I can't wait to bring him on board, and we're just going to chat all things bariatric. So Ken, I hope you're ready. We're about to get unzipped. We're starting off laughing. What happened?
No, it's just as somebody that was, we've known each other for a couple of weeks. Like, I love your tagline. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I was very impressed by that. And then that music, I was like, oh wow, this is this is so different. I like it.
I just love, like, you guys at home couldn't see it, but I saw Ken just kind of like.
I know. Well, that was another thing. I was like, I don't. I hope she doesn't see me because I was like, I'm toning it down. So I was like, she might see me, so I'm definitely toning it down.
Let the record show. I've been watching a lot of court stuff lately. Let the record show. I saw
Sure.
everything. We're good.
You saw everything.
But how are you this week?
This week, oh God, I mean, this week is just flying by. It's one of those weeks where you're just like, I feel like I've been trying to catch up just like since Monday, and it's already midweek. It's just been
Yeah.
It's just been go, 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 go.
I don't know what it was about this week. Maybe it's because I've been doing a lot more behind the scenes, like trying to build this thing up. But I feel like I'm almost rushing for time every single day. Like there's just not enough hours in the day.
You got to get, it's crazy. Like when you build something from scratch, like you really do, like it takes up so much of your time. It takes up so
Yeah.
much of your time, your focus. I don't know, like at the end of the day, after you've have to do your regular stuff and then your extra stuff, like what's left for you at the end of like how much gas is left over after that?
Yeah. And it's just so. I mean, I have so many questions for you, and we're like, I'm just letting you know right now, we're not getting to everything today. So
Makes
I've
sense.
already, I've already told Ken, I don't think he really has a choice. He's just gonna have to come back on multiple occasions down the road so that we can like just talk all the time. Um, so I don't want to spend a whole ton of time talking all about the backstory and the origin story, but I do think it's important to kind of touch on it as to how we got here to this moment today, talking on these computer screens all over the place. I'm going to assume if you were to ask yourself 10 years ago, where would you be? I'm thinking it might not be in this exact moment right now.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So, what was Ken like before everything?
Before everything, I mean, I was pretty much, personality wise, like the same type of person. I have like a appetite for like random, goofy, silly, kind of stupid humor. But like the idea of like recording myself or like being on camera or talking about, my issues or like how we get over things or, being some sort of guide for somebody, that was never on the table at all. No, like I used to walk into a room and be like, "Nobody look at me, please. Like I'm just a mess. I don't have my shit together. I'm trying to just, keep this, together as best as I can." And now like, fast forward 10 years and I wouldn't say like, we all have room to grow, but like I love my life now. Like it's such a like it feels purposeful. I look forward to waking up in the morning. It's fun interacting with people. I love making things that are creative or fun or interesting. It's just a completely different life. And at the center of all of that, like it kind of started with this surgery procedure.
Yeah. And so, what was the highest that you had ever gotten to before you decided to have the surgery?
So the highest I weighed was 220. I'm sorry, not 200. So it's the number was 525 pounds. I
Oh,
read the number wrong and thought it was 252 pounds, which would have been fantastic. But yeah, no, that was I knew I was bad. Like I knew like my
right.
weight was, but I didn't think I was in the 500, category.
You know, and because they talk about a lot of times body dysmorphia, like when you've lost the weight, and sometimes you still see yourself as a fatter person or obese person.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've touched on it before, but I remember when I was at my heaviest, which was like over 350 at one point, there was times I didn't realize I was that big. Like I didn't register how large I was until occasionally you saw a picture or something on social media and you're like, wait, am I really that big?
Oh yeah, the dreaded out in the wild candid picture, like,
Yes.
oh my god, yeah, no, I've it's crazy to me, and did you used to take I mean, did you take a lot of selfies back in the day? Did you used to take pictures of yourself, like, a lot? Like, I don't think I did.
I didn't, but there were times where if I was feeling and I lost like a couple of pounds, I
Sure.
have learned the proper angles. You hold it just high enough
Of
so that
course.
there's only one chin, or
Right.
you would get creative and you like pose a certain way to kind of give the. I mean, I'm just kidding myself because like you can't hide 300 pounds, but I would try to find ways to do it. But I usually, there was a time where I didn't really take very many, I didn't want to be in pictures, or I would say, please
No.
don't post that.
That is so funny. Because I had that too, and, yeah, yeah, I never wanted to be in pictures, but then, like, as you said, like, I don't know, back when Facebook was, like, becoming, like, a thing, like, I'd look back and be like, "Oh, look, there's me with our friends at a party," and I'm like and I am easily the biggest person, not only in that room, but, like, in that picture, but also in that room, and you're like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "Is that how is that how everyone sees me? Why isn't anyone saying anything?" Like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and what's so crazy, and one of the reasons I really love that you're here today is one, because you're a guy, and
Sure.
like, I mean, obviously you know that.
I do.
But we see so much on social media, people talking about the surgery. The vast majority of the people talking about it are all women,
Correct.
and they're very vocal about it. It's almost become like a rarity when a guy comes out and said, "Hey, I had surgery. This was my story." And I kind of want to know your thoughts on what do you think the reasoning for why men are not as vocal about it?
I I have a couple of theories. I think it has to do with maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe they don't think it's like a masculine thing or like a testosterone driven thing. I mean, I get that. I mean, sometimes like I'm so not like that. Like I've never been like I don't like sports. I was never like an alcohol drinker. I don't go to the bar. Like I wouldn't consider myself as like a masculine person. I'm definitely a male. I definitely identify as male, and I just think it has to do with like it just doesn't seem very macho or very inspiring to like have a procedure or admit that like I have a problem that is beyond my control and I need help. I don't I
Yeah.
think that's how I kind of chop it up.
Okay, interesting. And like
Yeah.
do you think that like based on your experience, have did people treat you differently when you were heavier? Because like I've joked with people before. I'm not really joked, but like when you look at Hollywood and stuff like that, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of men who are overweight, but they're the funny guy. They still get the girl. Um, it's more about the sense of humor that they bring. But a lot of times, if a woman's really funny and happens to be a weight in the same scale, her weight is usually judged more often. Like I don't know if there's a double standard, but for you personally, did you find yourself being ridiculed
My
or
My personal experience with my weight, I mean, think about like in high school, my weight started becoming a problem about junior year of high school and mid year and then mid into my sophomore year of college. And the one thing I always the one thing like I noticed with my weight was like if I had a crush on somebody, I I would refrain from telling them this because I had so many experiences where I would get a crush on somebody and I would do what I thought what people do. They ask around
yeah,
like, "Oh, hey, what's that person's deal? Are they seeing someone?" what's going on. And someone would hear that through the grapevine, and then like it would just spread through the school like a plague. Like, oh hey, Ken likes this person, and then like it would eventually get to the person that I was talking about, and there was like this like not like it. I don't want to come off like a jerk, but like there
Yeah.
was almost like this attitude, like this, like, how dare you do this to me? Like, how dare you express that you have like you're attracted to me? And that happened. It happened so many times where I was like, am I not supposed to have feelings for people? Like, because it seems like a burden, and it's such a terrible. Oh yeah, it's a rejection. Obviously, is like the most sour feeling you can possibly feel. But then
Wait,
like
you
not
don't
even.
love it?
Yeah, yeah. Right, it's like it's but, like, to not even have the opportunity to be rejected, to be like, "How dare you, like, possibly be attracted to me?"
Right.
It just became it became impossible to, like, wrap my head around, like, being in a or being like a relationship, like, something worthwhile.
Like almost you're not worthy enough to have happiness or be in a relationship. Like,
It
so is it safe to say that you were probably friend zoned a lot
Oh,
back
all
in
the time. Oh god, I used to joke. I used to joke I had a PO box in the friend zone. Like that was as good as it get. Yeah, I mean that was as good as it got, and like you eventually like you start to settle for like what people will give you. So like
Yeah.
I had so many friends that were girls that like remember I had one that like her boyfriend was in the military, so she would call me over, we would watch movies, we'd make dinner, like we would have like what I would perceive as like sort of a relationship without any of like like the good stuff. Although the other stuff is like great too. You're just like, well, this is it. Like this is as far as I get. Like I cook, we watch movies together, and that's
Yeah.
all I'll ever have.
I remember my biggest frustration is I was a tomboy. Like, so I only had a lot of guy friends growing up. And then you
Sure.
get into the puberty phase, and now you're kind of awkward because now you're having crushes on all these guys that you're friends with.
Of course.
And the reoccurring theme is like they would make a point of saying, "Oh, Sherry, you're like a little sister to me," or "Oh, like, oh, I love having you as a sister." And you're like,
Oh
"Can
my
we
god.
twist the knife a little bit more?" And I remember one of the worst feelings, and in hindsight, it wasn't meant to come off mean, but
Sure.
I had a friend basically admit that he's like, Sherry, he's like, I think you're awesome. He's like, but I'm going to be honest with you. If I saw you across the street, I wouldn't have given you a second look.
Oh, what was
And I'm like,
what?
we,
What
we talked,
what prompted this?
I think there was a lot of alcohol involved that day,
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
party or something like that.
Okay.
And but it was somebody that I had thought was attractive. That I don't know, maybe one day somebody will think I'm cute. And he said, but he's like, let me rephrase. He's like, I am
Yeah.
so blessed that I know you. He's like, because since
Sure.
I've gotten to know you as a person, like I absolutely love you. He's like, I'm just being honest. And I'm like, well, I appreciate. I know Emily just asked, why did he feel the need to express that?
I just said this. I asked the same thing, Emily. What the f?
Yeah, like
Like,
I don't know what, but again, this is like 20 some odd years ago. Like you're young and stupid, and alcohol. A lot of people tell the truth naturally,
sure.
and it was kind of like this harsh realization that I mean, you're basically telling me that I'm an awesome person, or and that you love me, but that's not enough. The interior is just not enough. And look, I get that you have to have a chemistry with someone. There has to be a physical attraction. And I was one of those people that I've, dated people in the past that weren't, considered society tens, but there was always something about them that made them more attractive
Sure.
to me. And I guess I just always wish that I would be viewed in that sense. But so since you were friend zoned a lot,
All the time.
how has how has that changed since you've lost all this weight?
Um, how's it changed? So ironically, like it sort of it started to change. It didn't change when I started losing weight. Well, okay. Let me make sure that this makes sense. So I started dating and started being able to be more active when I was on some sort of path towards like health. Like I
Yeah.
always say, like there's nothing more attractive than somebody that is working on themselves. And that could be in any way, shape, or form. Going to the gym, taking care of yourself, eating better, school, whatever. A person under construction is very attractive. So like I started giving myself that mission. Like instead of just being like I'm going to find someone and I'm going to make that person the center of my world, I started being like I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to have my own personal missions and goals and do that. And then like stuff sort of just clicks and falls into place and you meet people and then you have something interesting to talk to and that becomes like the attractive thing. Now,
Yeah.
like you said with earlier, you have to have something else. Like you have to be like funny or have some sort of, like game or that sort of thing. And eventually, like you're like, yeah, okay. So like if I'm not constantly moving and going and trying to make something out of myself, I'm like, again, like, am I not good enough? And it's just
Yeah.
it's a mind f.
It's so hard. Like I remember I was one of those people that I knew I was not going to get by on my looks. I was always passed over for like jobs and promotions and stuff like that. And I remember, and I don't know if you and I had talked about this, but I had a very specific incident where I was meeting somebody at a restaurant. I think I was
Sure.
meeting some friends at a restaurant, and I was walking up to the door, and there was these two beautiful blonde LA bombshells that were also going into the restaurant. And this guy happened to open the door for them, like let the women in, be a gentleman. And
Right.
then and I'm like maybe like a few feet behind them, but just before I can get in the door, he let himself in. So
Sure.
he let in and I'm like, oh, okay. I'll be my own gentleman today. Like that's fine. But I felt like I had two options. I can always cry about this or be upset
Sure.
or I can just kind of beat people to the punch. Even though you don't assume that someone's thinking things, I used to just assume that everybody was fixated on my weight. So I
Oh,
would,
all the time.
yeah. And
Sure.
then you find yourself always making jokes about yourself, like self-deprecating on yourself in order to make somebody else laugh to kind of remove the elephant. Like, hey, I'm okay
Well,
that I'm fat because I'm making a joke about it. So you don't have to make jokes.
right, right. Like I broke a chair on the way over here, guys. God, they got to make stronger chairs. And then you're like, oh, he knows he's fat. He's fine. Like, cool. Thank God. I don't have to say anything now.
Oh my God. Have you ever broken a chair?
All the time. All the time. Yeah. Oh
Oh my God.
yeah. Oh
I'll
yeah. Banes of my existence.
Oh, I freaking hate chairs. I remember being on my very first vacate, like real vacation to Hawaii. The plane had just landed. Everybody is taking a nap because it was like a really early flight. And I'm sitting on
Oh
one of
my
those like
God.
chaise lounges. I'm talking to my mom on the phone. I'm just like enjoying. I've never been to Hawaii and or whatever. I literally hang up the phone and I just exhale. And then I heard a rip. And then I fell through like the center of it.
And
And
on a plane. Oh my God.
no, we were
No,
at
no,
the
on the lounge. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
on the lounge. Now everybody was asleep. Everybody was overly exhausted. So nobody witnessed it, but I am like and I'm not a crier. I was in tears going, this is how I'm going to start this journey. And my poor husband was so tired. He was asleep. And I go into the room and I'm like trying to wake him up. And he's like, huh, huh, like what? And I'm like, I broke a chair. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry, babe. And then he like rolls over and like goes back to sleep.
It's
And it's
earth
not
shattering.
yeah, and it's not that Eric was purposely like avoiding it. Like he just didn't remember the conversation. But then you kind of just have this moment to yourself where you're just like contemplating like this is like you and I have talked before. I loved that movie called Shallow Hal.
Yes.
I just resonated so much. I was Gwyneth Paltrow. I was experiencing those things. And I remember having this thought going, I just broke the chair like she just broke the chair.
If I so it's not the breaking of the chair. It's the fact that your weight like overcame the physical properties of something that's supposed to
Right.
support weight. If that happened to me, and it has, like in your situation, I would have gotten a shovel and I would have dug a grave and just pretended like it didn't happen, like I was trying to hide a body. Like it's so embarrassing. And
So
it's so hard to like you can't imagine someone being empathetic to it because you're like, all right, well, get another chair. I'd be like, you don't understand how
right.
earth shattering that moment is to me right now. That
And
I'm too heavy for furniture.
Right. And especially like chairs are very sturdy, like they're meant to hold a lot of weight. And
Yeah.
so the fact that you defied gravity or defied physics and broke this with your sheer weight, and people who are not in your position, they'll feel sorry for you, like they'll feel bad that it happened, but to them it might not be a big deal. But that is literally, like you said, I'm digging a grave, I'm leaving a note saying, enjoy your vacation, I'm going to be in the sand buried, and then call it a day.
Changing my name, moving
Yeah,
away. Oh, the whole 9 yards. Oh god. And also, when you think about sitting, it's your second laziest position you possibly can be in.
right.
Like, it doesn't get any like, it's either that or sleeping in bed, and you're like, "Oh my god."
I
So
literally,
embarrassing.
I literally failed at being lazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Um,
I'm too large for lazy. My god.
I'm too large to be lazy.
Yeah.
I just love that scene in the movie where he's like, they need to be like welded better in the corners. Like, what kind of, and they're like, it's titanium. And he's
Did
like,
you did you ever notice, like, there was, like, a certain type of chair, like a very cheap plastic Walmart chair, you're like, "That's not working for me today. I'm gonna be
yeah,
standing at this party all day."
yeah. And how many times, like people, like things we take for granted, how many times have you gone to an event or a party and seen what kind of chairs they have and have to
Sure.
make a decision? I think I'm going to be standing up most of the night
Or do
because
I
there's
take a
that fear.
chance? Yeah, or do I take a chance and hope that I don't break it or 2 can get up from it?
Right. Like,
Yeah.
and especially, oh my God, if there was like a folding chair on the grass, and then like, and and you see like average people sitting on it, and it kind of like makes the legs kind of bow out a little bit. And you're
Oh,
like, no,
yeah.
not doing it.
I got a sectional in my living room, and I've never sat on the corner piece because, once upon a time when I was my heaviest, I used to sit on our sectional on the corner piece, and that was the part of the couch that broke, like, very, very quickly, and I was and so I just, like, I'm like, "That must be the weak part of the couch," not thinking, but not, like, acknowledging that I had
Right.
something to do with it. I just jumped on it the other day and I was like, "This is so comfortable. Why don't I ever sit here?" I'm like, "It's because I avoid it. It's because I don't wanna break another couch." Do you have things like that? Do you have things, you've lost weight, you've been your size for quite some time. Do you still find yourself having, like, doing those, like, mental backflips for certain things where you're like, "Oh, I don't have to do this anymore. I can actually, like, tie my own shoes. Like, I don't have to, like, do the Captain Morgan and kinda position myself."
Yes, one of them 100% is because I was so big, and as women, we have wider hips, we have boobs, and we take up a lot of different space.
Hell
And
yeah.
one of the things that I used to do often is I would be like in a supermarket or a store, a Target, and I would turn around to answer somebody or to look for something, and my ass would knock something off the shelf.
Oh, sure,
Or like
sure.
I bumped in and like my boob would like knock a bottle off like the top shelf or whatever. And so even to this day, and it's been almost 8 years, once in a blue moon, I find myself being overly cautious being in an aisle to make sure I'm not going to bump something over.
Mhm.
Or I've said, when you're in a parking lot and there's two cars, you have to gauge how you're going to get into the parking lot, and like how you're going to, if I go sideways, am I going to fit? Or can I suck
Right.
my gut in enough to make it with the rear view mirrors right there?
Yep.
And even to this day, I find myself turning sideways once in a while going, no, I could have walked straight. Like, why am I like
You're,
fixated?
like, sucking your gut in. You're, like like, 3 feet away from a car. It's
And,
like, "I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna do it."
or like, there's no car there. Why are you still doing it? Like, I don't,
I'm in an empty parking lot. What's wrong with me?
there's nobody else here.
Yeah, no.
Um, So I know that you've been very vocal about your journey too. And so you had started, you said, at 525 pounds, and you gotten down into the 200s.
Yep.
And then at some point, you had a lot of regain.
I did. So, statistically with this, there's, people that do fantastic, they do okay, and then I was in, like, the last category where, like, you gain all of the weight back. Um, I definitely found myself there. I was in a deep depression and denial that had happened. I was like, this won't happen to me. I'm having a surgery. Like, this is supposed to fix you." And then, yeah, then you find yourself, going back to, like, the plus size clothes place that you used to buy, and you have to buy a whole new wardrobe because nothing really fits you. And then you notice that, I got a new job, and I did not tell them that I had had surgery back in 2014 because I was like, because I thought the question would be like, so when are you going to lose weight? And I was like, oh, I already did, and then I regained it all. It's utterly embarrassing. It's super discouraging, and you're like, wow, I defied medical science and somehow regained all the weight back. It's so embarrassing.
And at the time, like, are you consciously aware that you're eating more and that you're gaining weight, or is it something just like you're just not?
Sometimes. No, sometimes you do. Sometimes, like, you can sometimes you can go very hard and be like, "I know I shouldn't be at McDonald's for the 5th time today, but I don't care."
Got it.
Though you have those days. The ones that would trip me up was, like, when you do regular grocery shopping and then you're looking around, you're like, "So I eat a diet of pasta, egg waffles, bacon," and you're going down this thing, you're like, "Yeah, I could see how I got here." It's very obvious.
Yeah.
It's no secret. It's just hard to get your mind in a place when you're ready to do something about it.
Yeah. So we did have a question from Emily. She wanted to know how far out are you and which surgery did you have?
So I had the gastric sleeve in 2014. Hey Emily, I see you commenting. It's nice to have you.
Oh, good. Oh, you can see. Okay, good. Good to
I
know.
can.
So yeah, Ken and I are sleeve brother and sister right now because we were
Correct.
sleeved in the same year, and I think literally a couple weeks apart.
Yeah, that was one of those like I feel like we have like a lot. The more we talk, you're like, oh, I have that too.
Yeah.
That was one of the very first ones. You're like, wait, what month? August? What year? 28. I was like, yeah. I was like, we were right around the same time, and it's kind of cool because like the more we talk, the more I'm like, I find we have more in common or we have like a
Mhm.
similar mindset, and it's very cool. It's cool like when paths have similarities like that. It's special.
And I love that too because and you and I have both talked about it back then, and I say like back then like it was like decades ago.
The
Like
before times.
it's
Yeah.
in the before times. There wasn't a lot of social media support groups. Like we had Facebook,
Yep.
and we had, but I didn't know of any support groups. So you're kind of like figuring everything out on your own. At least for me, I don't know if you were part of support groups or you were able to get information when things were happening.
So like my program was one of the rare programs that had a support group built into it. So that was part of the process of getting approved. So like I was lucky on that front. But like doing my research, 7, 8 years ago, I was looking around the landscape. I was like, I bet you there's a guy who has a blog or some sort of like publication that like went from, where I am to where, I want to be. Cause like you're curious, like I don't know about you, but like before and after pictures, like when you're first starting out, you're like, I want to be that. I want to do that. I want to like look how big I was now, and then look how good I look now. And I just looked around, and I would just do it, in my spare time or when I would get bored, and I could not find anyone talking about it, and it was scary. It was really really scary because you're like, okay, either we don't talk about this, like that's the less scary thing. I was like,
Mhm.
or it doesn't happen, which was, very scary, like with anything goals or success, like you try to find like a template or a model to
Yeah.
model yourself after, right? That way you can kind of wrap your head around dedicating yourself to something, and I just wasn't finding it, and it scares me now because I mean it scared me back then, but it scares me now because I know there are people just like me that struggle in the same ways that I do and that don't talk about it or are looking for somebody as like a guide or a hope, and they just don't have it.
Yeah. Oh, Emily asked real quick, how old were you when you had the surgery? If you don't mind.
Oh, of course not. No, no, no. So as of today, I'm 35. So let's see, that would make me what, 20, roughly 26, 27, roughly at that point. I had it during college, and I was very fortunate that I had good health insurance at that point.
That's awesome. We actually
Mhm.
have somebody watching from Australia.
Oh wow.
So
Oh
Kez
hi.
says, good morning from your friend in Australia. Good morning, Kez.
Hi,
Um,
Kaz.
what were we just talking about? I was gonna ask you something specific.
Okay, so we were just discussing. I was talking about finding somebody like online as a template. Oh, when I
Oh,
got the
yes.
surgery. Okay.
And so that got me thinking, and I think I just did a TikTok about it the other day. So
Yeah.
I didn't have support groups. So I don't know if there was ever times for
Right.
you where you had like a specific experience and you didn't, and like you don't know if it's normal. And now, like, you see on social media, people say like, hey, I'm having this, is it normal? And everyone's like, oh my god, yes, it's completely normal, hair loss.
Correct.
For
Correct.
me, I didn't have a forum to go to. So I remember there was a time, and I was going to ask you if you had the same thing too. For like a couple months, I had the weirdest taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I said it was almost like I was sucking on a penny, and I've never sucked on a penny before, so I
But
don't even
everyone knows what that is. Everybody knows. Yeah.
automatically know what that would taste like. And I
Yeah.
had that for months, and it was
Months.
driving me crazy to the point where I thought this was going to be the rest of my life. And I'm
Of
popping
course.
Tums, and I'm like, this surgery has destroyed the inside of my mouth. I am never going to have food again. And you're in a place where you're not even eating a lot of the kinds of foods that you want to eat anyway. Now, to ease you guys watching this, in hindsight, your body is in ketosis, from what I understand. So that
Correct.
can bring that taste. But when things like that happen and you don't have someone to go to, people like Sherry go to Google, and we
Yep.
ask Google to decipher our symptoms. And Google will always tell me that I have some rare disease and I'm about to die and I need to go to
Google.
the hospital.
Yeah. Google real quick. Why do I taste pennies?
Yeah, why
just.
do I taste pennies? And like, you have some rare mouth cancer and you should probably go see your doctor. And you're like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I've been told that I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, which is
Oh,
why
really? Why?
just
Why do they say that about you? Do you agree with that?
um let's just say I've been banned from Google.
Okay.
I'm no longer allowed to Google my symptoms.
Sure.
Um I've been very vocal about my mental health issue in my book, where I had an incident where I had a complete nervous breakdown as a result of stress.
Apologies. I'm not laughing about your mental breakdown. Someone just said a tiny bit. So I'm sorry.
To
You had a mental breakdown. Please continue.
confirm, Ken is not a heartless asshole laughing at my mental illness.
So funny.
Hilarious.
And then now I'm laughing because of the timing. So like, apologies.
No, and that's the thing is I've learned in life you have to laugh about the good and the bad. And that was
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I wrote about it is, but if you've never experienced anxiety before, and those of you who have, you feel like your entire walls are caving in. And I was getting headaches, and then like when the headache would form, it would turn into a panic attack. Then when the panic attack came, I couldn't breathe. I'm thinking I'm having a heart attack. And finally, we had gone to the ER like 4 times in the course of a week.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and by the fifth time, I'm laying in bed and the headache started. And now I knew what the chain reaction was going to be. And I told my husband, I need to go to the hospital. And God rest Eric, he did not mean it in a negative way, but he's like, almost like, again, like, you're fine. Like, we've already been to the hospital. He hasn't slept all week because like every time you go to the hospital, it's not in and out. You're in there for like 5 or 6 hours before you're discharged. This
Every
always
time.
happens in the middle of the night. I'm gonna have him on the show one day so that he can tell his side of the story,
Right.
with the whole journey. But he was getting agitated, and then so me, I get frustrated. I'm like, fine, fine, I'll be fine. If I die, I die. And I get,
Everything's fine. Do you know what fine stands for?
what does fine stand for?
Oh, I used to know. It's one of the it's I will think of it, but it is it's a funny acronym
Okay,
for
I
what
love
it
it.
is. Yeah,
If
I'll
somebody's
think about it.
watching, if somebody's watching, Google what fine means for us. Um, so I turned to Google because my husband was not being there for me, and I turned to Google, and Google told me that I had a brain tumor, and that was what was causing everything. So now I'm freaked out that I have a brain tumor. So I tell my husband, I said, I think I have a brain tumor. I need to get a CAT scan. And Eric goes, Sherry, you don't have a brain tumor. He's like, let me tell you what's going to happen. He's like, I'm going to put my shoes on. We're going to go to the hospital. The minute we get to the hospital, you're going to pass out because now you're in a safe space and you're just going to calm down. They're going to give you something to calm down. Then I'm going to sit there for 5 or 6 hours watching you sleep and being all calm now before we're allowed to go home. He's like, so
Right.
hold on a second. Let me get my shoes. And I'm like, fine. And when I got to the hospital, they're like, what's going on? And I literally told them, I said, I have a brain tumor. I need a CAT scan. And they look at Eric and he's just like,
Gives him the cat ears and the whiskers. Like, Put her in
Yeah,
the machine.
wonder what it was. And
Put
then
her in the machine.
sure enough, they gave me a CAT scan. They gave me all of the tests, and there was nothing there.
Of course
So,
not.
so to answer your question mildly, I can admit that I've been a little bit of a hypochondriac in the past, and it's
Sure.
probably not a good thing to Google your symptoms, especially when you're in a state. And why I am so grateful that there's so many support groups out there and that there's so many resources for people to answer these simple questions. Sometimes it's just a headache.
So, like, we've talked about how we were going into the surgery a little bit. Y Did you ever have, like, this, like, idea or sense you're like because you're signing up for this, right? So, any
Right.
consequence that you have as a result of it is your fault, as opposed to
Yeah.
everything else with that's you get a cold, it's not your fault you got a cold, you caught a cold. But, like,
Right.
if you have weight loss surgery and now you're tasting pennies, you have no one else to blame for yourself. Was this a
Right.
way to kinda confirm you're like, "I made the wrong decision. This is my doing, and now I have to sleep in this bed."
Oh, so Emily Googled it for us. She,
So yeah.
can you see
Yeah.
it?
Yes, I do. I was writing it out too. I wrote frantic, irritated, neurotic, and emotional, but, like, yeah, that one works too. That one fits.
Oh, and Kez says feeling insecure, neurotic, and emotional. Oh, I like
Yeah,
all of these.
yeah.
Excuse my language. I kind of like fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional myself.
I've swapped out fine for neutral because people won't people don't know how to respond to neutral. If I say fine, they're like, "You're being deceitful," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm neutral.
Yeah,
I
I'm
could
just
take it or leave it."
that's on you or whatever. But not to cut you off.
You're
So
good. No, you're good. You're good. You're good. So, yeah, I could understand that. I mean, that does it's scary. It's scary, and you want to make sure that you're good. It is funny that the process was taking you to the hospital. They give you some feel good meds, and then you would feel good, and then you'd be on your way 5 hours
right,
later. I could understand having feelings about that for sure.
yeah, having a couple feelings or whatever. But
Yeah.
so somebody had asked. I think they asked a question on TikTok recently, and I thought it was an excellent question.
Oh
And it
shoot.
was, um, when you were going through your surgery process, did the place that you go to really prepare you mentally for what the journey was going to bring? Like, did it really help get you prepared for the mental stress or the mental health of it all?
No, actually. My program did a lot of good. It's one of the better ones I've looked into or seen or participated in. It still can't prepare you for the mental thing. It's one of those things, and I talk to people about this that I'm friends with, like, on Instagram and stuff that are going through it. It's like until you're in it, until you experience it, you can't necessarily appreciate, like, the gravity of it. It's hard to describe. It's hard to be like sometimes you're gonna feel like a failure, sometimes you're gonna feel like you've made a mistake, sometimes you're gonna feel like you're like, why do I need to have a surgery to achieve, like, something as trivial as, like, a number on the scale? You go through the litany of it. Um but just it's kind of like a different flavor of depression, like,
Yeah,
like, if there's, like, a million different flavors of ice cream, there's, like, it's, like, a different type of, that the only difference is that you've signed up for it, you've probably put a lot of work into getting to it, and now you have to sit with your decision. It is it can be an absolute mind F for sure. And I still fall for it, to this day.
yeah,
I'll be sitting in it and I'm like, I recognize these thoughts. I've had these thoughts a million times. I know that it's nonsense, but when your body is flooded with all the fun hormones that it floods you with when you're in these sort of states, you're like, it still feels real, and it's real for me right now, and you sort of have to power through it. But no, my program, I don't think there is a program that can really prepare you for it. Talking to others, as you said, like, if when you talk to somebody, like, you ever feel like blue, like, after, like, yeah, you have a dinner with people and they're eating a normal amount and you're not able to, like, for people to be like, yes, all the time, you're like, oh, thank God, cool. No, I'm not so weird.
yeah. And so, question. I mean, like, so
Sure.
when you had this surgery, you
Yeah.
lost all this weight, your confidence is changing. Like you said, you're acknowledging I put myself through this, and the rigorous steps that you have to go to with the liquid and the protein and the small bites and everything that it encompasses. what is your mental state like when you wake up one day realizing, oh my God, I've gained a ton of this weight back. All of that work, all of those sacrifices that you made for yourself to find yourself almost in a very similar position again. How do you get on the other side of that?
That's a very it's a very long process. I was thinking about this today. Um, so like you know how like you think of like all the stuff that we consume, like TV shows, movies, that sort of thing. Like the narrative always starts off with there's a person, something happens to them, they do something as a result of that. Um, but that's not life, you know? Like, I feel like a lot of people are sitting around waiting for some sort of catalyst that, like, puts them on the path that they wanna be on, and then they go kick ass, and I don't think that's reality. I don't think that's how the world works. I beat myself up about regaining the weight for so long. I was like, "This that was a waste of time." There's no bigger embarrassment as a bariatric patient than being a bariatric patient that you feel like you're on the other side of failure, like it didn't work for you, but it's not supposed to work for you. It's supposed to be a guardrail for you. You don't drive on the highway grinding up against the guardrail. It's there to protect you in moments where you lose control or something happens, right? I would journal a lot. I would write about, like, where I was and where I wanted to be and how I would try to figure out how to get there. And then, I'm, like, kind of like an all or nothing person, or at least I try not to be, but I definitely am that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've done that a million times. I've quit everything. I've done cold turkey. I've gone to the gym all at once. And then after 6 days, it gets old and I stop. So I just was like, well, let's try it different. Let's do these things in baby steps the way that everyone's like, you just have to take it one step at a time. And then you roll your eyes and like, all right, let's try this one thing at a time thing. So then you get your diet right. Then you start exercising a little bit more. And then like this weird chain reaction happens. You're like, well, I'm eating better now. I should exercise more. Well, I'm exercising more, so I should eat better. And then you kind of find yourself on this like kind of hopefully healthy hamster wheel that
Yeah.
gets you back to where you want to go. That's how I would sum up how I got back to where I am. Like
Yeah. And
you just
I
have
love
to figure out your system.
Yeah, and I love the analogy you used about the guardrail too. That was fantastic.
Thank
And
you.
I remember long before I had the surgery, I had talked to like a life coach or something like that, and she had this really amazing exercise where she kind of had like this circled wheel,
Okay.
and there's all these dots around it, and each dot represented a different aspect of your life: financial, personality, self confidence, your job, your home life, your relationship. It had all these different things. And then on the wheel was like zero, like 1 to 10. How happy were you in each individual specific aspect?
Mhm.
And when I did it, I noticed that every single aspect of my life was closer to the one. It was on the lower side.
Oh, no
I wasn't
kidding.
happy with my job. I wasn't happy with how I looked. I wasn't happy in my relationship. Like everything was, nothing was at a 10. And it was like this huge realization that I'm just not a happy person. Like there's no aspect that's going well for me.
Okay.
And it's kind of like when you're trying to revamp your house or clean your house, and you're like, which room do you start with first? Because if you start in the kitchen and then you found something in the drawer, well, this doesn't go here, it needs to go into the guest room. So then you go into the guest room, you're like, oh shit, this is a shit show. And now you're working
Right.
in the guest room, you find something else from the back, and it just creates this vicious cycle. And at the end of the day, you've made a bigger mess, and not one area has been worked on.
And you've wasted a bunch of time to
And you
boot.
wasted all of this time and for nothing.
Yeah.
And so she said, pick one thing, just one small aspect, and just put your energy. Don't get distracted. Don't work on the other things. And she said, like, basically what you would find is when one aspect is going better, then it kind of creates this, like you said, this slow chain reaction where other areas start to improve. And just like if you're focusing on your physical health and you're working out more, and you're like, oh, maybe I should eat a little bit better, and you're more conscious about the food, then all of a sudden, now that you're doing that, you're just naturally starting to feel a little bit more confident in general. And so then all of a sudden, the way that you're approaching and talking to other people, there's more of a glow to you. So now your relationships are and it just kind of creates this whole chain reaction around you.
It 100% does. It's like oh my god, I just I'm so sorry. I just lost my train of thought. We were talking about building momentum and this chain reaction.
And
Yeah,
focusing.
no. Oh, I remember. I remember. Sorry. So like when people see you doing this, like they attribute, oh, they're so happy because they lost weight, they were successful, and it's not about the weight loss. It's about the
Right.
pursuit of health. It's about being on the path, being on that path, and being like in the middle of it or on it. It feels so empowering because it's exactly
Yes.
where you want to be. Yeah, does it feel great to get out of like the 260s into the 250s? 100% it does. But like just being on the path and striving for something, it's very inspiring and it does make you want to go do more.
100%. And I don't think it's necessarily always the physical look that you have, that
No.
it's what this surgery has now allowed you to do, things that you couldn't have done before.
Yeah.
um like, and I'm curious for like women, at least women on social media who've had this surgery, they're all about the non-scale victories and
Sure.
wearing the bikini or crossing the legs. Just curious from a guy's perspective, are you as I don't want to say excited for it, or is that does that play like a big role in measuring your success or anything?
It does. I mean, so like the scale is like the first thing that you think of, but like then eventually the scale gets old. Like you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I went down a little bit more. Who cares? Like, um, clothes was a big thing for me. Like I was always like forced to like wear like this like I remember back in high school, like I was only I was only able to shop at one store that was very street urban wear, and nothing against that, but that's not the look I always liked.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be what later became the hipster look, which is why I'm not a fan of that look anymore. They're not making like vests and ties and suits like that in my size, so like I was kind of excluded from that. So clothes is like a big deal for me. Being able to go into a place that doesn't have some sort of like like pun, like I used to shop at DXL and you're like, oh, because I'm extra large, that's funny, cool, like great. um that's a huge one for me. And then this, as I said, like the scale stops being like the focus, and then you switch into, at least with me, like into what you can do.
Hmm.
So like my favorite non-scale victory was last summer. My sister Diana, who's a complete health nut, like she's a mountain climber, she's just like a hiker, like things that like you would read on a dating profile. You're like, we have nothing in common.
Yeah.
um, she was like, "Do you want to do this 5K with me?" Because like she had known like I had started walking, and I was like, a 5K. I'm like, where they run the whole thing? I was like, that's not for me. And she's like, no, no, you don't have to run it. You can walk it. And I was like, I don't know about you, but like if I sign up for something, I'm like, I'm not doing it half-ass. I need to do it
Yep.
right.
I have. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like, I have to do it. Like no bumpers. Like I'm not gonna look ridiculous doing something. So I just started training for like a 5K. And then, I get there and I do it and I'm like pacing myself and I'm like, oh, I want to be able to run this whole thing from beginning to end. And I see the finish line and I cross it. I'm not that far behind her. I had passed people that were a quarter of my size, and it showed me that like a lot of my issues were just that, were my issues, whether it be like I could have done this before. I could have, in high school I could have run track. In middle school I could have done the mile. I used to look at people and I'm like, well, of course they can run and go do stuff. Look at them. And then I'm sitting here on the day of the race and I'm zooming past people like 110, 120 pounds, yoga pants up, and they're walking it because they can't run the whole thing. And I'm zooming past them. And it's not about it's not a competition, but like I didn't expect to be passing anybody. I thought I'd be
Right.
dead last, and it wasn't the case. So that was a huge one for me.
That is so. And didn't you like you go running now?
I do. And I like it too. That's the other thing. That's the one of the keys to this is like I never thought I would run, let alone like it. You go through life so long being like, I'm not this,
Hmm.
because maybe you can't do that, or maybe in your head you're like, I could never do that. And then you try it and you do it, and then you get good at it. And then you're like, I want to keep doing this. This
Yeah.
rules, you know? Do you have anything like that?
My I remember, yes. my passion growing up was dancing.
Oh,
I,
that's right. I saw I saw you. Yeah, that was so cool to see. I would love to do something like that.
yeah,
So
we'll come here to Cal. We'll dance together because
oh, that'd be so cool.
it would be so, and we can make a show all about it, and like we're gonna get Ken to dance. But when I was a kid,
Yeah.
even at like 12, 13, I was very overweight, and I always struggled with being fat, and I there was a time in high school where I didn't have a lot of friends, or I was always grounded, or I spent a lot of time in my room.
You were grounded a lot?
I was always grounded for like I would get like a D on a report card, and then I'm grounded the
Okay.
entire semester until I bring it up, and I'm
I
that's
see.
like I'm not doing anything else like terrible. And but I also I wanted to be a triple threat in Hollywood when I was a kid. I wanted to be Judy Garland. I wanted to sing and dance and act, and I was so obsessed with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire and just the women like Ginger, and the way that they were so graceful when they danced, and it was so elegant, and it was so, and being a tomboy, it was so feminine, and that was so not me,
Right.
that I was like, well, I want to dance. But then you look in the mirror and you're like, well, I can't fit in a dress, and I definitely can't do that move. I can't cross my legs, so I'm not gonna be able to kick my leg up or anything. And it just became a pipe dream like your whole life. And that was one of the first, not one of the first things, but that was something I finally pursued after the surgery, and I had lost all this weight. It was after I had had regain. I had had a regain of about 50 pounds,
Mhm.
but I started dancing, and I started learning, like, you watch dance. I used to watch Dancing with the Stars religiously, and I'm like, I want to do that.
Dancing the cha-cha-cha.
Yes, with
Right.
Sherry and Ken down in um and so I started learning it, and I became obsessed. And at one point I was dancing 5 nights a week. I was
Oh, that's
going
so
to
cool.
every class that they offer, like I was a part of it. And then I became really good friends with one of the instructors who, after I'd left this school that I was going to, he started teaching me one-on-one. And like what was interesting that you said earlier is it's always go big or go home. Like you don't
Sure, of
want to
course.
half-ass anything.
Yeah, no.
So he kind of had a similar mindset. And then like we would have a lesson, and he would be showing me these moves, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. But I get overly critical with myself. If I'm not getting it right away, I get frustrated. And if I do
Oh,
something,
totally. Oh,
if I
totally, I get that.
yeah, and if you do something, you want to be the best at it, or at least close to like what your perceived best of it is. And I would get so frustrated, and I'd be like, Marlon, like, I'm not, like, I'm getting really pissed. And he goes, Sherry, he's like, you need to understand something. He's like, I'm not teaching you basics. He's like,
Mm.
I'm teaching you professionals. I'm teaching you gold level things. He's like, you're not expected to know it. And I'm like, why the hell are you teaching me all this hard shit? Like, I'm still a beginner. And he goes,
Yeah.
because I know how you are. You can handle it. He's like,
Wow.
he said, I would rather teach you the gold stuff and then have you retain 30% of it. You're going to be far above somebody who's like in a beginner level. And I'm mad. I get frustrated with myself because I've adopted that mindset, that I
Right.
don't just show me the easy things, show me the hard things, because now that's what I want to do. But then I get nervous because like I don't want to set you up for failure or like set yourself up. But I do like having because back then I would have never thought I could do this. I would have always made excuses.
When he told you the method to his madness, did that cut through the frustration at all?
To an extent, yes. I
It's
still
still
get
frustrating, right?
still get
You're
frustrated.
like, "I still don't get it, though."
Yeah, I still don't get it. And
Yeah.
like I just started trying yoga, and I've been having
Oh
some
god.
in the house, which I didn't understand stretching can
No.
make you sweat so hard.
Hardcore.
Have you
Absolutely.
ever done it?
The hardest thing I've ever done was yoga. I have
Really?
a oh, yeah, yeah. I have a picture from the first time I lost weight. I tried yoga at the gym I used to go to, and it was the hardest thing I had ever done. I've done demolition. I've worked with like trucks. Like I've knocked down cinder block walls, and yoga was the thing that was like I can't, like this is killing me. Like I
Yeah.
don't feel well. I don't feel safe.
Yoga's gonna be your downfall, none of these other things.
Oh no, 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 no. I'm like, you know, run all these races and lift all these weights, and I walk around with with a 150-pound vest. That's fine, but yoga, that's the thing that breaks me. It is
Yes.
so hard.
It is so hard. And I've only done it a couple times now. And I met with her yesterday and I have literally sweat dripping down my face by just bending. I'm just bending. That's all I'm doing. And I'm like, why is this so hard?
It's
And
so
I
hard.
can't, and you trying to live. And then like there's muscles in your body that you don't know that you have until yoga explores these muscles that were never in existence before. And she's like, and I'm getting frustrated again. And I'm like, why am I not doing this? And she goes, Sherry, I have to admit something. She's
Yeah.
like, this routine that we're doing, she's like, this is what I do with my teacher. She's like,
Oh, okay.
and I'm
Why does
like,
everyone make you do such hard things?
that's
What the
it.
heck?
I told Eric last night, he goes, Sherry, what is it with everybody assuming like there's no beginning? It's like just go like just start at the top. And I'm like, I
Yeah,
appreciate it because
yeah.
it's pushing me, but can we just start easy?
Everybody cool it down. Like that's flattering and cool, but like why do they look at you and be like, we're gonna run her through the gambit
Yeah,
real quick?
we're gonna give
That
her as
is
much
insane.
pain as humanly possible
That's
to see
insane.
if she can do it. It's so crazy. And I'm so bummed. Like we're almost running out of time. But
Oh shoot.
um, one thing I want to know is, since you've had this surgery, like
Yeah.
you had said, you were more introverted before,
Oh sure.
and then all of a sudden something happens where you're like, maybe I'm gonna post a little foodie video on social media. And so, one of the questions that I've been asked to ask you is, one, what's your inspiration? Like when you're deciding to make like a food video for a TikTok or an Instagram, like how do you know which recipes or what foods to try?
That's a good question. So like with food, we eat food with our eyes. Like that's the first thing that
100%.
like if it doesn't look good, you're not gonna put that in your mouth. Like at least I won't. Um, I try to think. I think of it in a couple of levels. I'm like, what will look good, and then the other thing is like, what would be easy to make for like a family, because so many people that get this surgery, like they have a family, whether it be a husband, wife, kids, or whatever. And when I had my procedure done, I was living with my folks and my siblings and everything like that, and it was really it was isolating because like what I would be eating would be very different from them, and I never thought that that would be a problem. But
Right.
then you realize how communal food is, and that it's not just important to eat together, but then to also be enjoying the same thing. Like there's something there. That's the thing. So like when I'm looking for a meal, I'm like, what can be made that we can either freeze for later, prep for later, put into a jar, serve at a party. And most of the stuff that I make, like if you look at it, like you could be like, oh, that's a small meal, or that's something I could serve at like a party as like an hors d'oeuvre. Like that's the kind of stuff that I typically shoot for. I also like to make things that are kind of stupid easy to make. I mean, not just from my level, but like I would hate to be like, hey, bariatric patients, you know how you have like all this new extra stuff you have to think about. Make this super complicated meal on top of that, and you'll feel
Yeah.
great. It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, it'll go over real well, I'm sure.
Right. The food thing, I love it because I know that was at least for me, like, that was a huge barrier. Like, I was like, "I'm not ready to give up." I'm gonna give up food. Like, I was saying goodbye to food forever. But, like, you understand that, like, you don't know what life is gonna be like until you're there. But the thing is it's not like you can go back. It's not like you can be like, Give me back that stomach real quick, if you wouldn't mind." So it's nice to be able to show people like a little bit of hope. You're like, this is how it is, and it's not so bad, and it's actually pretty cool. It's definitely different, but different doesn't have to be bad.
Right. And I don't want people to think that because you've had bariatric surgery, you're never going to have good food again.
No,
There's so many
no.
variations and options that you can do. And one thing that I love about your videos, because I stalk your page when you're not around, I'm just putting it
Thank
out
you. Aw, thank you.
there. Is a lot of the recipes are fairly easy.
So
Sometimes
easy.
it's not a lot of ingredients. It makes it simple enough that the average person who might not even be a chef or know how to cook can at least replicate a majority of your videos and have this huge variety of different meals. Um, I'm still obsessed about the potato one with the little like, onions and stuff. I need to make that one.
French onion time bombs. Yeah,
Yes, French
that's
onion.
that's one of the ones I'm super proud about because it looks fantastic. It's very flavorful
Mhm.
and like it's not difficult to make. At least I don't think so.
I'm hoping not. So if you guys are watching this, you can watch Ken's videos on the Bariatric Chef at TikTok. Um, And so, and like one of the last questions I have is coming
Sure.
from a place where you were introverted, you were friend zoned, you were
Yeah.
shy, you didn't really put yourself out there, to now actively choosing to create content to put out there for tens of thousands of people. Like, how is your mindset shifted to handle, like, from going from never having attention to now getting attention?
It's cool. It's certainly cool. I mean, it's I almost feel like, sort of making up for lost time where you felt like, a piece of furniture, like in social situations. It's remarkable. It's funny. Sometimes like your mind does these like things where you're like, I block it out and I'm like, I don't really like let it not affect me, but I'm like, I'll be like, oh, 40,000 people, like whatever. Like, and you try to imagine how many people 40,000 people are, and you're like, oh, that's a that's a hefty sum for sure.
A little
Uh,
bit.
it's just I don't know, like it started with it's the story like I told you in the beginning, which was like I was worried that there was no one online talking about the stuff that was doing it. So I was like, well, I guess I'll be that person because I don't see that person. So it started like that. And then, showing people, that aren't necessarily like looking for a guy, to be like be that. I was like, oh, if you're on the fence about it and you're worried about some certain things, like let me give you some useful information or some useful tips about that sort of stuff. It it's very cool. There's really no way of saying it. Like I want to be humble about it, but it kind of rocks. It's me. It's
100%.
me.
And like,
Yeah.
it shouldn't come off as cocky in any way, because you can still be flattered and you can still love the attention, but knowing where you came from and what your past was like,
Yeah.
it really humbles you. Because as we know in life, as we saw with the pandemic, like anything can happen tomorrow and the rug can get pulled underneath you and all of the attention, can go away.
Sure.
But right now I feel like you're just enjoying the ride and you're not letting it get to your head. You're just having fun with it.
It's fun. It's fun. It's a hobby. Maybe it'll be a business someday. I don't know what it is, but I'm doing it because I enjoy it, and I'm
Yeah.
doing it, and I feel like I'm putting myself out there, and that feels somewhat right and natural, and you should be able to do that stuff if you want to do it. You know what I mean?
I absolutely love that. I can seriously just talk to you for hours, and we've already done that, and I know that we're going to do it continuously throughout.
I certainly hope so.
If you guys want to follow Ken on Instagram, he is at Keto Ken, and if you want to follow him on TikTok, he is at the Bariatric Chef. Send in your comments if you want to have Ken come to California and take a dance class with Sherry, because that would be totally fun.
That'd
We're
be
gonna
so cool.
tango or cha cha or something. I don't know yet. And I had a request, that we need to do a video one day, and I need to make one of your recipes.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking about that. So obviously, so like on my TikTok side, I think so you need 1,000 followers to go live with that. I'm gonna shoot a video, talk about this, talk about the show because I think it's very important, and I'm gonna see if I can get people to start looking at you so that we can actually do a live together, so that we could do that because I would love to do that.
So
Yeah, that'd be great.
I would need X amount of followers to be able to join in on a live too.
No, not at all. You just need 1,000 followers, and you can go live whenever you want.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So people of TikTok,
I will
follow
rally
me.
the troops. Don't worry. Yeah, I'll rally.
Come find me. If you guys have other questions for Ken, please feel free to comment on this video. I'll make sure that it gets to him. I've already made the decision. Ken doesn't have a say anymore. He's just going to come back on multiple occasions whenever he's available. Um,
You make a very comfortable podcast, and I would love to hang out with you some other time. Of course, like
and I
open
appreciate
invitation. Yeah.
And that was the whole thing. I know we've totally gone over time. I really don't give a flying shit right now.
Apologies.
No, both of us. There's look at this. I have like all of these notes and questions, and we didn't even get to half of them because we've just been like rambling about different, going all over the place.
Yeah.
But one of the whole sole purposes that I wanted to do this show Unzipped and talk to different people is how often do we see somebody's before and after picture and we're like, oh my God, they look amazing. This is what I want to do. I'm going to go and sign up to have surgery.
Sure.
What people don't realize is how much story exists between that before and after picture.
There's so much.
There's,
There's almost too much.
you
You
know,
know what I mean?
so I wrote a whole book on just like the first like year and a half basically of
Yeah.
the story. Which shameless plug, if you guys don't know, you can get my copy Unzipped online on my website, sherryarcuria.com.
It's not shameless when it's your own show. Just so you
I don't know,
know.
I feel kind of bad though. But that was what I want to talk about real shit. I want to talk about, you know,
You
the
should.
realities of the surgery, the realities of how obesity affects you, how you can overcome it. One of the biggest fears for people who have the surgery is, what if I gain it all back? What happens if I have regain? And look, here's Ken's story right here. He was not immune to that
No.
reality, but he made a decision that this is so much more than having the one surgery. It's just a tool to bring you on for the rest of your life. And if you're not using your tool correctly, you can have complications and issues inside. I am not immune to it either. I've had setbacks as well. But the purpose of this show is to highlight it's not all unicorns and sunshines and rainbows.
No.
Sometimes it is darkness, it is mental health, it is depression, it could be transfer addictions, it could be regain. There's so many other elements that I think that we're not talking enough about in the community. And so that's what the whole purpose of this is. And Ken, I can't thank you enough. You've been so wonderful.
Oh, it's a pleasure of mine. Seriously, I can't get enough of the host of the show. Like I'm a big fan, obviously.
And you're gonna come dance with me, right?
I would like that. I mean,
Okay.
my team is out in California, so that would be a good excuse to head out to California, right?
Well, come on. What state are you in again?
I'm in the state of Massachusetts.
Ah, is it really
Yeah.
cold right now?
No, it's like 55 out.
I think I can handle 55.
Okay, cool.
My friend, our guest Chelsea last week, where she lives, it gets to negative 30 at times.
Where does she live?
I forgot. I think it was like
You said
Ohio.
-30?
Yeah, she said at some point in the winter it can get like you don't leave your house. I said that's another case where I would bury a hole in the snow and I would just go lay there. Like I can't. Yeah, Sherry, that's too cold for Sherry. Sherry can't. I'm from sunny California. I can't handle cold.
So I mean, like one of the first places I lived was like California, but I've lived in the East Coast for most of my life, so I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
Like, but like, yeah, I've been to the West Coast. I'd be like, oh my God, this is how it is all year. Why would anyone leave here? It rules. I mean, besides the fires and of course, and
Well,
that sort of
besides
stuff.
fires and earthquakes and inflation,
Yeah,
gas prices,
yeah,
and everything. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, but we have 3 out of 8 of those things over here. You know, we're not
That's
immune
true.
from it.
I guess that's true. Oh
No.
my God, I'm gonna go off on another like hour-long tangent. I can't do that. Before we leave, finally, is there anything else that you want to add or say or plug or whatever you want?
Nothing like that. Just that I appreciate you and I appreciate the show, and I'm really excited to see what the show becomes. I really am.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of it in the early
Thank you.
stages. And like I said, you're coming back for sure.
Hope
Um,
so.
and like I said, if you guys are watching this, please share, spread the word, tell your friends about it. If somebody's thinking about having bariatric surgery, have them reach out to us because at the end of the day, I want to help as many people. Ken wants to help as many people. We just want to be able to get the word out. And so, on that note, we thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.
Consider yourself unzipped.
Oh, I like that. You've
Yep.
been unzipped.